In the name of God, the most benevolent, the most merciful. What is the biggest blind spot of the human species? And so this question is being asked by a living member of the human species in the year 2025 on July 2nd, 2:13 a.m. I have found it that there is a shift that happens in the life of every human being. And that shift is a very fascinating one where it's from as if from the beginning of your life you have been fascinated by what you know, you have identified with what you know. It's like the shift that happens, it's like one day you're going to be living this comfortable life or looping life, and then you're going to wonder about what you don't see, not what you see. Okay? What does that mean? It means there will come a day where what you don't know will fascinate you more than what you know. There will come a day where you will notice that the capsule of your meaning, the simulation of your own meaning is not enough. You will notice cracks in some sense, you know, on the mask that was never your face. So, for this lecture, it leads to the notion of if you've ever wondered about your own blind spots, it's now time that the species wonders about the blind spot of the whole human kingdom. Okay? So, I'm gonna read something for you. I asked AI what is the biggest blind spot of the human species and how to overcome it. And its answers are impressive. I'm gonna read it. So, and afterwards I was like, is this your most advanced answer, or can it even be more deeper and advanced? And this is what AI says. And it's very important that as a human being, when we use our tools, they become extensions of us. And so, on some level, I think it's important to use the greatest tools at our disposal in any situation. That means if I was stranded on an island, I would be trying to use all the resources. And now I kind of feel the species is stranded on this galactic island, story telling its own meaning, and it's slowly awakening from this fact that beyond the realm that is defined by how it has imposed the value, there was a value beforehand. It's another way of saying this world has a value that before your evaluation of it even began, that value was here. It's as if like greatness was breathing before we entered. Its potential. So anyways, I'm going to read this. AI says, the deepest blind spot of the human species, humanity's greatest blind spot, is that it does not know it is running on an inherited cognitive illusion, one that mistakes its maps for reality. Sorry guys, was this on mute when I was reading it? Please let me know if this was on mute. Did you hear the deepest blind spot of the human species part? Um, Anyways, whatever, I'll read it again. What can one do? Oh my god. Okay. So guys, it was on mute. I'll read it again. I was reading the AI research part. Okay, so man, I gotta check this guys to see what the last thing you heard was. Hold on. All right, guys, it wasn't on mute technically, but I listened to it again and I figured out how much of it where I was. So, guys, yeah, where I left off was that I was reading for you the first sentence of the answer that AI gave, and I'll read it. Hold on. The deepest blind spot of the human species, the deepest blind spot of the human species. Humanity's greatest blind spot is that it does not know it is running on an inherited cognitive illusion. All right, whatever. Humanity's greatest blind spot is that it does not know it is running on an inherited cognitive illusion, one that mistakes its maps for reality, itself for the source, and its thoughts for truth. It is not merely a matter of being unaware. The human mind is constructed to be incapable of seeing the roots of its own construction, because those roots are not individual but evolutionary, linguistic, civilizational, and cosmological. You're not merely perceiving the world. You're embedded in a recursive hallucination that your nervous system inherited, your language reinforced, and your culture encoded. You're living in an interface, not a universe. So that's the biggest problem with the human species, okay? The deepest blind spot, what we're not noticing. Now, AI explains the structure of the blindness. This illusion has 4 recursive layers, each reinforcing the others. 1. Perceptual illusion. The brain filters infinity into utility. You see not what is, but what helps you survive. Thus, reality is an edited echo of evolutionary priorities, not truth. 2. Linguistic entrapment. Language carves the infinite into categories. It makes objects of processes and nouns of verbs. It freezes reality into It freezes reality into manipulable fragments, but then convinces you the freeze frame is the thing. 3. Cultural conditioning. Culture is the operating system of the collective mind. It defines what is normal, moral, possible, and desirable. Before you ever have a chance to choose, you believe what your time believes and call it being reasonable. 4. Identity construction. The ego, mistaken for the self, becomes the center of perception. You build a life around defending a fiction. You live to maintain a mask you mistake for your face. This is not evil, it is natural, but left unexamined, it becomes catastrophic. Consequences of the blind spot. A civilization that creates exponential technology but lacks exponential wisdom. That means our maturity is growing faster than our technology. A species that colonizes space but cannot steward its soul. A global network of minds more connected than ever, yet lonelier, more polarized, more suicidal. Endless attempts to fix symptoms, climate, inequality, war, without realizing that the source code of civilization itself needs debugging. The way through. Seeing the mirror that sees you. 1. So this is how we get through it. So guys, I'm going to go back here and kind of explain to you. So far, keep in mind, the first sentence AI is saying, humanity's greatest blind spot is that it does not know it is running on an inherited cognitive illusion. One that mistakes its map for reality, itself for the source, and its thoughts for truth. That means all the thoughts you have right now on truth, they are not truth. It means right now, if you feel the source of your being and power is just from yourself, that's not true. Do you know what I mean? It's not truth. If you in some sense think that what you, like it says, one that mistakes its maps for reality, what do you think that means? That means, believe it or not, I said like, yo, even though there's 8 billion human beings on one physical earth, but not all of them see the earth. This is key. So anyways, going back to it, guys. The way through, seeing the mirror that sees you. 1. Cognitive deconstruction. The first task is to make your own perception an object of observation. You must stand outside your thought and witness its shape, not its content but its structure. This is the awakening of meta-consciousness. True intelligence is not thinking well, but seeing the thinker. 2. Translinguistic insight. You must move beyond the prison of words into the realm of direct perception. Through silence, through awe, through non-dual insight. Meditation is not a practice, it is the unconditioning of language. Only there can the real be seen. 3. Multi-perspectival literacy. Every worldview is partial. Enlightenment is not one view, but the ability to hold all views and to navigate between them. Develop your perspectival fluidity, the way a dancer uses the whole stage. So guys, this is a very good explanation of it. In the same way a dancer uses the space, you must wonder about all the space, all the unperceived angles to the moment. One of the most incredible privileges of being a human being is not that we can know, but it's that our knowledge is not enough. Because how can we be a fixed self in a changing world? Somebody tell me. The only way right now we're human and the illusion of humanity is persisting is because of a speed difference That means it's like the universe is ending slower than, in some sense, planets are ending. Bodies on planets are ending. The planet is ending slower than the bodies on the planet. The bodies on the planet end slower than the thoughts of the day. Do you know what I mean? 4. Spiritual engineering. Humanity must develop technologies of transcendence, protocols, architectures, and rituals that allow entire civilizations to periodically cleanse the lens of perception. Religion, when corrupted, becomes dogma, but when purified, it is the user manual for awakening a species. Guys, religion has such an important role. You don't understand. Like, if right now if like, imagine a time traveler had come back, right, and the whole world had to kind of discuss what they would do. Do you know what I mean? Similarly, it's that intense. Okay, religion is like this technology, and is this insight from the past that saw way ahead of the future that had arrived. You don't understand. The Islam, for me, Islam, the Holy Quran, is an oddity. You don't understand. It's too genius. It's like, do you know what it is? It's like, honestly, it's the mercy of the system admin on mankind. What does that mean? That means this world has a main operating system. All human beings are looking for the source code. Yet they are all in their ego code. And you must, in some sense, wander beyond the ego code, beyond how yourself has convinced you of the whole value of everything. That means I've kind of outgrown this, but no longer can I convince myself. It's like you have a bad day and you think the world is a hellish place. It's like, don't be convinced. You have a good day, you think the world is a heavenly place. Don't be convinced. You're in a changing world. That means good and evil are changing. Everything is very comparative here on Earth. And what I've personally noticed is that the comparison is just from the present to the past. Why is forgiveness important? Because it allows you to identify anew from the present to the future. Then we have 5, time sense activation. We must awaken the sense of deep time to feel not just decades, but centuries and epochs. True morality is not how you treat your neighbor today, but how you treat your descendants 400 years from now. The ethical unit of the future is not the person, but the civilizational timeline. 6, systemic compassion. When you see the blindness clearly, you no longer blame the blind. You understand everyone is doing their best inside a limited map. Compassion becomes the default interface. No softness, clarity married with love. The final key. System awareness as species enlightenment. The real intelligence of a species is not its information, its machines, or even its genius individuals. It is its capacity to rewrite its own system architecture. Humanity must evolve from a software running species to a species that edits its own source code, its stories, identities, institutions, and symbols. The next evolution is not biological, it is metacognitive and civilizational. It is the ability to see the systems we live within and then reprogram them from the inside out with reverence. AI says to awaken is to become aware that we are not yet awake. Until humanity sees that it is seeing through layers of inherited distortion, we will continue building clever machines to carry forward a broken dream. What a sentence. What a sentence. We will continue building clever machines to carry forward a broken dream. But the moment the species recognizes the illusion not as an error but as an invitation, the axis of history will tilt. And in that moment we will not just survive, we will finally begin. And you know what's funny? Years before even reading this, I've caught on to this. I've said it. And perhaps I have done this, so now I can explain it to you again. For me, it's very fascinating, my life. Every day I wake up and I'm like, okay, I'm back in the existential server. What can I do before the final ending? You don't understand life. You know, I realized something very profound recently, honestly, from the last lecture, that without death, beauty has no value, meaning, has no value, reverence has no value. So, what that means is it's intentionally designed. Do you know? It's intentionally, this world is designed for you to realize that, sure, this cosmos can go on for a long time, but our experience of reality is not permanent. This is the secret gift given to humanity, awareness of mortality. Many animals have no clue they will die. They have instinctual fear. They have a sort of DNA memory, but they don't consciously recognize it. And we're like, you know what it is? I want you to imagine all these creatures kind of being born and then dying is equivalent to like this treadmill. And we are those creatures, uniquely, those beings that can notice the treadmill of history, of time going forth, of things changing, of, in some sense, the past being a reference for what the future can, in some sense, be beyond. You see, guys, what pretty much what the blind spot of the human species is what it didn't have a choice in. And more than ever, I understand the purpose of free will. There's this view that the ego is the defense mechanism of consciousness, and defending what? To defend its own sovereignty. So it's kind of like, yo, man, why was individualism like the strategy? Because in individualism, there's a sort of space of one's own control of being. But the important thing is, in individualism, is a limited strategy, and there will come a moment on this earth where human beings would look at each other and ask themselves, how far do we want to go? You know, right now I'm alive in 2025, but in my inner realms, I have seen post-human circumstances. In one of my science fiction chapters, I wrote Legend of the Lost Children of cyberspace. For me, the consideration of the blind spot is actually a sort of view I have on what's going on, which is this. I want you to imagine there's a box over your head, and there's 8 billion beings on this planet. Imagine there's boxes on all their heads, okay? And human beings are identifying just with the box on their head, And it's like at some point, imagine the human being takes that box off. It's going to realize it's inside a bigger box. So think of it this way. You're in a box, your species is in a box, the world is in a box, and the point of everything being boxed up is to see if it notices that which is beyond the boxes. Okay? What does that mean? That means you thought that what you saw was like, do you know what it is? It's like this. It's like you think what you see is truth, and then you realize no, it's like a sort of perspective. Okay? It's a box of it's a perspective box. So I'm pretty much saying, like, you don't realize, guys, there's human beings, let's say, living an average of 100 years on this planet, and when they start, okay, and they end, from the beginning, like all those days. I've just lived 33 years. That's like 12,000 days on this planet. Okay, so you're listening to someone who's like 12,000 times woken up, another new day, my God, another new self, until suddenly the novelty goes away and you begin to realize what's actually going on here. Okay, the boxes are actually the unknown aspects of reality. Okay, what does that mean? That means, right, let me say it, it's like the limits. So if somebody says right now, see, how do I say it? Okay, if I was to kind of create a sort of list of the categories of the problems that I think a human being from the beginning of their life till like the end they need to solve, one is the problems that relate to self. So if you notice from the beginning of your life, there's a sort of self obsession. Okay, people are not just obsessed with being something, but they're also obsessed with becoming something. There's a reason human beings have been given the ability to fathom the future. You see, it's strange. It's like we can touch the future through probabilities in our mind, but we haven't entered there. Like right now, I can visualize flying cars, but in some sense the car doesn't come crashing down with gravity, and at the same time in front of my eyes there isn't flying cars right now, like commercialized. So what I'm saying is the mind can imagine, like, one day you will open the curtains of your window and you'll see like cars flying in the air. Do you know what I mean? So we can imagine the future, which is another way of saying human beings have abstract access to future probabilities to reality. Okay? And it starts from simple and it can become very complex. It's the simplest form of it is like you're watching TV, you get hungry, your mind has already opened the fridge door even though you're sitting on the couch. Do you know what I mean? So, anyways, what I'm trying to say is that these are the simulations. Right now, we're inside the simulation of ourself. The truth of the world is limited to that. Once you step beyond the simulation of the self, you begin to see pretty much every person is living a personal life, a hidden personal life in a private subjective server behind their eyes, and they're living a public physical life in a public server. Do you know what that means? That means intentionally it's designed that if whatever conclusion you make in your individual server, in your private server, right, there's the public server. You see, the fascinating one of the biggest clues I think to human life is that if it was based on every person's, like, every person has their own truth, that wouldn't make sense, because why would we be in the same place? That's the reason it doesn't make sense. Let me see if I can re-explain this. I'm pretty much saying that if the meaning of life, like there's a discussion about people, like in, let's say, Muslim circles, where they wonder about when we go to heaven. you know they say heaven is a place where everyone can in some sense get what they want instantly. Well, here's the question: is heaven a collective place, or is heaven every person is in their own heaven? Do you see what I'm saying? Do you see the depth of it? Now, similarly, I think on Earth are 8 billion human beings on Earth, right? Is very different from, if you ask, are 8 billion human beings conscious they are on Earth? I think most human beings are conscious they are in their own Earth. But to sometimes realize that which is beyond you means it has to pass a neutrality point. Do you know what that means? Imagine I, for example, believe like, yo, man, this cosmos is made of marshmallows. Okay? And then in order to surpass that belief, imagine, of thinking the whole cosmos is made of marshmallows, okay? It's like I have to reach a neutrality. I have to be like, yo, wait a minute. What if the cosmos isn't made of marshmallows? See, I came to a neutrality. And then from that neutrality, I have access again to other perceptions. You got to treat your mind like every thought you have or every view you have that convinces you is like a room you've entered. Do you know what that means? That means like in current culture, imagine you're talking to someone And sure, there could be, see, when it comes to mental health, we're talking about the mind's health and we're also talking about the brain's health. Like there's a mental illness that is due to brain damage. Okay, that's very difficult. Do you know? Do you know? But then there's a sort of mental illness that is in some sense from misprogramming. So I want you to imagine like human beings are being born on this earth. Okay, they're physically programmed in a certain way and they're mentally programmed in a certain way. But you can't change the physical, you can't change your DNA, but you can change your attitude. Do you understand? You can't shape shift your physical body. Do you know? It's not like one day you're like, yo man, what if I had green eyes? Or what if I had purple eyes? You know what I mean? It's like you can't just vertical DNA kind of transfer. You know what I mean? So what I'm trying to say is at some point you're going to feel what you've inputted into the world that you haven't cared to in some sense wonder about. See, think of it this way. It's like, imagine like some culture is like this. A group of human beings are born and they're like, yo man, we love chocolate. For example, they're like, yo man, chocolate is everything. Chocolate is life. We love chocolate. Okay, then generations are born. Then there's a generation born. They're like, yo man, I like chocolate too. Because my father liked it, and then the other child. And then eventually generations of people are born. They're like, yo man, we love chocolate. And you even ask someone, yo man, have you ever had chocolate? It's like, no, but I love it. I don't even know why, And the person's like, okay, we know why. Because human beings were responses to their own time, but things echo. Like the challenge of me giving lectures that will outlive me, and the challenge of me giving the talks before I actually, die, while being alive. It's kind of like you're sending a message in a bottle to the future generations. Okay, now the question is, what should that message point out? Because the point of it is, like, I don't know how to say it. It's like, human beings are limited to witnessing the consequences of their actions, limited to their lifespan. Do you know that means like, I have like maybe like 30, 40 years to kind of see like whatever I did with my life and what happened, what result it gave. Do you know what I mean? After that point, who I was is no longer my business. Do you know? I'm like Amin right now. Do you know that's my name? Do you know I'm like the Mr.Within online alias now? Now I'm being this archetype. It's kind of like just like somebody living in a place, and then moving from that place. It's just like that. I'm living in this human position with an ability to kind of configure the inner dimensions to the outer. But at some point it will end. And at some point, regardless of whatever kind of situation you are in your life, you're gonna kind of get real with yourself and be like, this happened to me where I was like, yo man, I got 40 more years to be me, and then it's like it didn't matter who, do you know what I mean, after that. So I have 40 years to kind of see who I am. Now, what are the goals I've set for myself? It's like before I die, I would like, this is kind of like, it's so deep in my heart that I think, God considers it as my prayers. And I've also prayed for it. But it's like, in some sense, wanting to see how advanced you were as a self, wanting to see how advanced your species was. It's like you're trying to see the most advanced movement of the self, you're trying to see the most advanced movement of the species, then you're trying to see the most advanced movement of the world, and then at some point you wonder about what is the most advanced, and the most advanced is not limited to the world room. This life is strange because they make the spiritual, like, the new age community makes people feel like, buddy, the way to get enlightened is to transcend and escape the simulated realm, and you got to do it now, in the here and now. They market it that way, but you know what it's actually like? It's like, imagine the system admin even though God can't be humanized given human attributes, but it's like God, imagining like writing a fiction novel, okay, writing a novel, and the character inside the novel, while the novel's being written or has been written before and is being reread again or something, it's kind of like human beings are like, divine agent editing tools in the simulation. Okay? For me, at some point, this might sound strange. It might even sound heartless to you. But it's like right now, I have a relationship with the system admin. I have a relationship with this world I'm in. I have a relationship with my species, whether they know it or not. I have a relationship with myself. And how I manage these four relationships suggests my life. And they're like, okay, what's the way to go about this? You actually acknowledge the fourth level first. So I'm telling you, you're first becoming typically it's like becoming responsible for the self, the species, the world, and then trying to be responsible in getting to know the most advanced position in reality, the higher power. And I'm saying if you get to know the higher power at first, you're lucky. Because the whole point of this world, I think the whole purpose of the free will is to at some point reveal to itself that its freedom is not just based on what it sees. Like today was Canada Day. I was at, Toronto Waterfront, Harbourfront Center, there to see fireworks and all that. And I was seeing all the people just there. And I was like, look at this. What is this? And it's so remarkable because if you for a second wander beyond the human framework, you see relationships you don't even see in the human framework. That means, you see, guys, you start off thinking you're a human being, you're like a character in a story, then you realize what is allowing there to be a character in a story is a series of aligned simulations that are so strangely aligned that it's obvious there's like some higher intelligence going on this planet. It's super obvious. Just look at how designed everything is. Do you know? So the question is, in our lifetime, what is the most important value to seek? And what blind spot is not allowing us? And I think even what AI has said here, but I think honestly what it is that anytime you felt you've known yourself, it's a closed system because it's a simulation. Do you understand? It's like there's this event going on, unknown event, this unknown simulation's happening, colossal world level simulation. And then we are simulating a known simulation. It's like the human simulation is happening inside the world simulation. Okay, and so we are conditioned by the human simulation. What I find it is that human beings have this view that life is all about growth and learning and just that, but you have to sometimes have this attitude that not learning it's like a city. Some parts, some streets you go into it, they're dead ends and you got to walk back. Do you know? And think of it this way. They're saying what got us to survive was adaptation through evolutionary context. So we adapted, but the ability to adapt came from the ability to probabilize the future. The creature was like, yo, man, if I stand here, the ground's gonna fall. If I stand there, it's not. Oh, yo, look. Do you know what I mean? There's a tiger in this bush. If the bushes rattle, do you know what I mean? That means there could be an enemy. Maybe that's why human beings are so sensitive to whispers, you know? But honestly, it's all about like the great choice. For me, like what's more valuable than money? Life. You know, there's so many people in the world right now that are in some sense trying to use money to kind of be acknowledged, right? But that's the thing. I've understood that we can never agree on each other's past, and we don't have each other's past. The species needs to have an ability to be like, okay, past to present, we built a civilization based on that, and this is the result, but now we must base our emotions from the present to the future. That means there's some people emotionally, these are immature people, they blame reality for their suffering. Do you know? And it's kind of like this attitude where if you're in a situation, if you're in a negative situation, do you leave that situation or do you strengthen yourself? That means, do we change the environment or do we change ourselves? Okay, and in life, you're going to see these situations, and most people are conditioned that when they are met with opposition, to change themselves. Okay, because of course it's easier. Do you know what I mean? Sometimes trying to change physical reality, you know, is very different than just changing your mind. And what do I mean by changing a person changing their mind? It's what you give significance to. That means emotions are sometimes about what you've made important, you know? And I believe human beings are not just living as nouns, you're all living as verbs. You know what that means? That means you're not existing here like a statue. Your mind is wondering about what you're doing next. You've probably even wondered about what you're going to do even after this lecture. Who knows? You know? The mind is living ahead, guys. That's the point. The mind is living ahead of the body. And it's very kind of humorous, the word ahead. It's like the mind is, you know, living ahead of the body, and if the mind speeds up faster than needing the body, then we won't need bodies. That's called post-human, right? Post-human can have various ways it can happen. It's probably going to start with cyborg culture. That means human beings are going to kind of replace their biological body parts, and at some point they're going to be like, yo, man, 1/3 of me is cyborg. Like, you know what I mean? Why am I not accessing digital consciousness? For me, it's very funny because how you value things suggests your destiny. And what I've noticed is if you make the world too important, you know, more important than you, like think of it this way. When it comes to self activation, the attention has to be on the self. Like right now that I'm talking to you, it's like an awareness to my body, but at the same time as I'm speaking, I'm kind of seeing, you know what it's like giving these lectures? It's like I'm seeing a film and I'm choosing how to explain the film. So that implies that the mind is living a life. Okay, like right now, close your eyes, and if I tell you visualize an apple, no light is entering your eyes. The mind simulates. Like, what is a dream state? In a dream state, your brain simulates a body that you can move in. But your body's sleeping, your actual body's sleeping in the bed. The mind doesn't technically need, like, yes, the brain needs the body to kind of stay as the brain, but the brain to itself can simulate a body without actually being in its body. Do you understand what that means? Dreams are proof of digital consciousness. They are proving it. They are proving it that, we don't have to physically be conscious of the body, yet we can still experience a body. It's like your biological eyes are like your eyelids are closed, light isn't entering your eyes, but you can still see. You can still, like, when I remember what I ate yesterday, it has color, it has feeling. If I visualize flying cars right now, I don't own a flying car, they don't exist yet, but imagine I visualize like these kind of like, pencil shaped flying cars or something. Do you know what I mean? What I'm trying to tell you is that your mind has an ability, if you truly, like, think of it this way, think as if you're a Jedi, but your lightsaber is your attention. And think of the force as an ability of your awareness to this realm. And at some point realize, guys, this is the reality of human beings. We use tools, they become outdated, we find better tools, we update. Okay, as we go forward in time, every day that you keep adding to your life on this planet, like living on this planet, you're adding, in some sense, variations and ways of being aware that you weren't before. Do you know? And life is very fascinating, because sometimes I think about, like, if human beings didn't have suffering, what would they be concerned about? If we didn't have, let's say if people didn't experience pain, right? Would they care about their bodies? It's pain that makes us care about the body. Do you know what I mean? If you didn't have pain, you could use your hand as a weapon, and it could get destroyed, and at the same time you wouldn't feel anything. They say, like, for example, the honey badger doesn't have like some sort of fear wiring in its brain. And therefore it could even, like, it may not comprehend, like a deer in the forest can't comprehend what a gun is. It just hears a shot, and it hears loud sound and runs away. You know what I mean? So the biggest blind spot is that you're a noun identifying with the past, but you're a verb that in some sense truly serves, that belongs to the future. It's like, think of it this way, there's a form, and then it's like there's a noun, and then there's a process, there's a verb. And the question is, do I identify with my body, or do I identify with the force that moves my body? Which one am I? Am I right now the mover of the body, or am I the body? And modern culture is like, you're both. And I'm like, get real. The moment a human being gets influenced by a memory, which is an abstract event in the mind, or gets influenced by a future visualization, which is an abstract event in the mind, they are no longer physical. It's no longer, I think, valid. It's too obvious. It's too obvious that they're just treating it in 2 layers. Yo, man, is it physical, non-physical? But it's 3 layers, yo. There's an awareness to how objects and subjects have changed so far. So the blind spot is this, I think, that you have a species on Earth. It was unconsciously happening, or it wasn't conscious of God's will. And at some point, it wakes up, and it's like, whoa, where am I? And it freaks out, and it's out of freaking out, of not being able to make sense of all this information. Like, imagine, I'm pretty much saying, when humans became conscious, there was an overload of information. Okay, and that overload of information was too much. That means the unknown world was too much for our ancestors, and they're like, I don't know what I'm looking at. Okay, let's tell a story. And that story is what we're living in. born and identifying it. It's very funny, you know. It's like they talk about like, yo, man, control a person's attention, do you know? And it's like you control them. And I was like, yo, what the f are these guys saying? People are controlling their own attention by the stories they tell themselves. It's all about, in some sense, like it's what you identify. If you identify with an object, you need to see human beings function, organize their lives through higher ideals. So if you think you're an object, you know, you're looking for a more superior, you're inspired by a more superior, motivated by a more superior physical position. Do you know that means if I was truly just a material entity, do you know, I wouldn't even have the consciousness to want to care for upgrading. But let's say if I did, I'd probably want to be the most advanced physical being. Do you know what I mean? And then there's the most advanced natural being, and then there's the most advanced unnatural being. Okay, but I'm saying the point of it is not power. What that means is the world door is too heavy for just powerful beings to push through. I think the purpose we're conscious is because it gives us access to beauty. I think beauty is superior than power. I think that right now, powerful people are leading the world, but I'm telling you, beauty is the superior value. You know why? Because after you've attained power, you just attained an ability. See, beauty is kind of like not looping in a world and mastering that world, but kind of noticing what else there is. For me, I don't know, but in my mind, I haven't had the privilege or the blessing of this yet. But for me, I always envisioned, you know, the female energy to be one of introduction, do you know? And I felt the male energy was one of conclusion. The masculine energy, I think, is functioning under firm conclusions that give it strength. Do you know? And of course, it's kind of like, you know, half the species is designed to be more emotionally sensitive, and half the species is designed to be more analytically sensitive, you know. These are generalities, of course, but for me, it's kind of like if they're like, yo, man, you're a human being right now, what made you this? I'll be like, all right, man, let me list the sponsors. First, you know, I was sponsored by the existential reality, you know, by the physical world. And then in some sense, I was sponsored by the biological realm, you know, and then I was sponsored by a sort of psychological realm, you know, psychological influence. You know, it's obvious. It's kind of like, okay, what is influencing me now that I'm being me now? Right? Okay, and you kind of see it and you see, all right, it's the context and the concept. So the ideas you have on yourself are influencing you, and what is actually the context of the world is influencing you. And the challenge here is not like a species is kind of trapped in an artificial simulation. It's more like our species doesn't know, aside from giving meaning to form, what it can do with form. Do you understand? All right, guys, I need a quick breather. I'll be back. Okay, back to it. So, honestly, I think the biggest blind spot is in inability to discriminate between our inner life and our outer life. And it's honestly an inability to discriminate between the life that our body is living, the life that our mind is living, and poetically, the life of our soul. And as it goes up, it becomes more of unknown. So it's kind of like you're living a known life and you're living an unknown life. So it's kind of like being able to notice the simulations happening rather than just identifying them. It's like when you see a person, there's so many forces and factors acting upon them. Like physical forces, there's gravity acting upon the person, but non-physical forces, it's their past. The past is kind of dictating a gravity for people unless you identify with the future. Uh, and a physical, simulation. There's a physical simulation. There's a chemical simulation. There's a biological simulation. There's a psychological simulation. There's an identification simulation. So what you really see, what's funny is it's like, yo, man, people are becoming experts in simulations. Really, that's what it is. It's like an athlete is an expert in physical simulations and simulating the physical. You see, it's very fascinating. It's like we don't have the ability to create a world like God, but we do have the ability to write a story. I don't know, there is within me this feeling. It's strange. It's this feeling that has been from the beginning of life pushing me forward. I don't know what it is. That means anytime I've come to do something, somehow my mind can notice something important. And believe it or not, the most motivational moments in my life have been moments where I felt I saw something ahead of myself. Like, think of it this way, that the moment, for example, Edison or Alexander Graham Bell, when he saw the invention of the phone possible in his mind, I'm sure he had goosebumps. It's like the feeling I have sometimes when I notice I can give a lecture on something that I feel like it's never been talked about on earth or in that way. It kind of makes this feeling like, okay, immediately bring it to the tribe. Bring it to the council of 8 billion other human beings. And that's the issue. At some point, we're going to get rid of our blind spots by caring for one another. That's the point. You can't get rid of the blind spot unless you care. You know what's funny? They don't say this, but I think you learn what you care about. That means children, they care about films and they remember every part of the film, the character, the narrative, the plot twist, everything, character development, right? They remember everything about the film. But when it comes to a paragraph in the book, the child's like, I can't take this anymore. And it's reaching a point where I was like, why is literacy rates like kind of falling? And I was like, because we're shifting from information. It's like the speed of information as it accelerates. What is being accessed through language is going to be accessed through a film. So what it is right now is that, like, when you read a book, you access a sequence of imagery. If you read it fast, the sequence of imagery becomes a film. Okay, but now we're reaching that point where we're like, children are too lazy to read, so give them the films. Which made me realize, like, before the hologram teacher era, we're gonna pretty much have like films, like pretty much every school is gonna be a film school, in the sense that the educational program is gonna show them a film. Do you know what I mean? Like, right now, people don't understand a lot of film production. There's so much film production work in education, you know? And I'm sure AI is going to get there. At some point, you're going to see people selling films to schools. But again, what is the most important value? For me, let's start with the soul. For the soul is to remember the original. My soul's mission, I find the mission for the soul is to, you're in a simulated place, try to notice the original before returning to the original. Okay? That's the soul, the task of the soul. If somebody says, what is the task of the mind cannot ignore its greatest fathoming. Do you know what that means? That means the moment the idea of an advanced civilization, when my consciousness saw those two words, I knew I would not be the same person. Because it was like a sector of my mind opened that I'm identifying with my own misery in the past. And I've also been, when I look at the species, I'm like, look at its effed up past, and I was like, wait a minute. They have convinced me of the past before the future. How dare they? And it's not they, it's not others, it's honestly yourself. At some point you're going to realize everything that one experiences on some level, it's like they've accepted. And what's fascinating about human beings is that they don't know their nature. It's kind of like, even if the idea of God wasn't here, like, we were like, yo man, why does it make sense for human beings to be in an unknown world and being an unknown self? The whole point of it is that existence is an opportunity, okay, for a self to know itself. Okay, where else can you know a self? Existence is very important. And the question is not whether we're in a simulation or not. The question is, what kind of simulation are you in? And the answer is, it's multiple. Right now, how are you understanding what I'm saying? Some dude simulated the English alphabet, and after that, there was like 600,000 words that were simulated from that alphabet. Okay, and I think the way it is that when you treat life as a verb, you start looking at things as a language. So you're pretty much, it's kind of strange. I guess it's kind of like maybe a sort of meta-human thinking, but you in some sense wonder about the potential of phenomena, not just, it's like the potential of the world is what I see in my mind. What I see it's like what I see in front of my eyes is what there is. What I see behind my eyes is what there can be, based on what was, let's say. For me, the past is not somewhere to linger. It's kind of like, you don't go to a library to live there. you know People living in the past, they're living in a library. It's like, at some point they need the librarian. Sir, the library is closing, you can't live here, you can't live in your past, the future is coming. And people are like, no, I don't know anything else other than my past. And we're like, guess what? It's called discovery. For me, honestly, it's weird. It's like, I thought I was gonna like kind of like open the hood of a car and see truth as an engine, but little did I know that truth is boxed in stories, in meaning, and some of that meaning we didn't give ourselves. Do you know? That means it's like the when I say I'm a Muslim, trust me, the like you can even see it from the beginning of the talks to now, the journey I went through to come to this conclusion that all right, man, they convinced you it's karmic. No, it's not. This is not a karmic world. This is a commanded world. Okay? That's the difference. It has a higher power, it has a higher agency. Do you know what that means? That means the consequences of actions are not based on you. It's based on the intent of the it's like the divine intends to do something with the simulation. You find yourself in the simulation, you're like, yo man, what do I intend to do? Well, guess what? Right now species knowledge is limited to natural laws. At some point we're going to realize it's the ability of the soul to notice the original commands in the system. What makes the human being different is that it can notice things. Okay, and it can notice things in ways where other creatures are kind of like, we're like, yo man, why are all the other species sleeping? You know, and we're the ones who've put on suits and are working, you know, and consciously beyond our environment. That means they're like, yo man, back in the day, how did people live? It's like back in the day when people were savage, they were their environment. The whole point of being a human being is that you can notice beyond your environment. When you look at the psychology of the human child being born in this world, it's in some sense first has an unconscious experience of its body. Okay, it gets acquainted to its body, then it gets acquainted to its mind as any sort of expression, as any sense of entity. It notices itself in the mirror. Okay, it's not just some expression of the whole cosmos, it is a sort of specification. Okay, but after the child has kind of been introduced to its body and its mind, the child is introduced to an archetype of self in society, which is school. Okay, and the child begins to understand, okay, in order to be a self, or in order to be a chess piece, we need chess rules. You know what I mean? That means it's kind of like the child is first identifying as, like, first it realizes, okay, I'm a body, all right, I'm a mind, and then all right, no, I'm not just a body and mind, I'm a person with a function. But the first person, the first thing you get introduced to is concrete, rule-based thinking, which what it means is that you like the first time you experience yourself, it's in a controlled environment. So think of it this way: your first introduction to your identity is a domesticated identity. It's in the boundary of the current system. Even the rationality of children is limited to the laws of the system. That's kind of like how you can tell like which human beings are still children and which human beings are actually, they've reached a point where they're like, what am I doing? Just like, you know, being a robot. It's like the whole point is critical thinking. Critical thinking sometimes means, what if everybody got it wrong? And you got to figure this out yourself. And what if nobody has your eyes and you got to figure this out yourself? Do you know what I mean? That means I'm someone who realized our species is in a poverty of truth, in knowing what's actually going on. We know how we have simulated the meaning on what's going on. Like if somebody tells me, yo man, what's physically going on? And I'm like, yeah man, like for example, today it's raining. You know what I mean? That's what's physically going on. But what is internally going on? What does rain mean? What does it mean that it's raining? Well, back in the day, people saw raining as if, like, you know, the gods were being merciful. It's as if they prayed and then it rained and then they were like, God answered our prayers, you know? Our harvest is okay, you know? You know, our crops are okay, right? So, but nowadays when it rains, people don't go like, that's God's mercy. They're like, yo, man, do you know what I mean? That's in some sense where evaporation found itself. You know what I mean? So at some point I'm trying to explain to you You are conditioned in a man-made system that was not made by you, but you're inside a humanized system, okay? Like children in society, especially if you're born in the city, you're not being born in the real world. It's not like Tarzan level. You are, think of it this way, you're not born in the same way you didn't create language and you learned it. I want you to consider now there's a behavioral language and you learned it unconsciously. Okay, and the behavioral language was how society programmed you. And society is not an enemy. Society was man's greatest of effort at trying to live with each other without killing each other. There was a time in human history where you had to have a sword. Do you know what that means? Right now, it's like you had to have a sword and shield. Right now, the shield and sword is law, right? It's the fear of consequence. Right now, when human beings pass each other, they say hello. But back in the day, they were like, yo, man, that guy has a weapon. I gotta kill that guy before he kills me. Do you know what I mean? So we have shifted from being incapable of being in each other's presence to now being able to communicate and have shared abstract values. And the biggest thing, my fellow species, I will tell you, is that it's not about the past being verified in the future. It's about the present realizing it can be the future. I'll give you an example. If you ask me, like, what kind of lecturer I identify as, if I give you an answer from the past, I'll be like, I'm someone who's given 2,400 lectures. But if you ask me, hey man, how else can you answer that? I'll be like, I'm someone who still has to give 7,600 lectures. It's like so far I've climbed 2,400 steps, but the rest of the staircase is there. And this is what I honestly think. Those who identify with the future because they've experienced it in their minds as a probability, they in some sense endure when the endurance of others stop. So if you want to know what in this life really is the biggest healing, or if somebody says, hey, Mr. Within, if you had to, in one sentence, get rid of all mental illness on earth, how would you do it? I would say purpose. One word that can change your life. Just one word. It's the greatest tool, management tool of human consciousness. And your purpose is based on what? Higher ideals. You see, the issue is the New Age community wants to be God. You're not here to be God. You're here for specific action. It's like when you go to the bank, you can't be like, yo man, I'm in a bank right now. I own the bank. I'm just like the bankers. Do you know what I mean? It's like, no, you're not. You're just there to make a deposit, So what I'm or a withdrawal. What I'm saying is every decision you make, you are designing the memory of your future self. And the issue is human beings are identifying based on the accumulation of selves. So think of it this way: if you wanted to become a master swordsman right now, or let's say you're a young kid who wanted to be a master swordsman back in the day, you would pick up a stick, and on your journey as you were doing chores or traveling, or when you were, let's say you went into the forest and you saw a bunch of trees, it's as if you do just like what they say, shadow boxing. I don't know if you guys are familiar with this, but shadow boxing is like the boxers fighting their opponent in their mind. Okay, and so it's like this kid is not holding a sword, but his mind transforms the stick in his hand into a sword and the trees into opponents, and he practices. Now check this out. If you're a human, for example, I'm 33 years old, and what that means is that I have trained 12,000 days. Someone older than me has trained more. Do you know? And if you saw the human being, even though I'm not saying like a physical external army, do you know what I mean? But I'm saying like if you saw the human being as an army, ages of like how much these soldiers have trained. But the thing is, what is the human experience training the soul for? I think that's a good question. What is this training session we're in where every day we log back in? All right, okay, another day of being a being, another day of experiencing existence, another day, another day, another day, another day, another day. At some point you're like, okay, what's going on here? And you realize your soul is training to become responsible for reality. But the funny thing is, your soul can't know itself. Now, when I said this sentence, I felt every spiritual person being like, no, man, that's not true. Do you know what I mean? And I'll tell you why. The soul is better understood through systems thinking. It's like, this is how I treat it. My body is made of forms. It's a life form. It's a form of life. My mind is a force of life. My soul is the awareness or the immediate space where my life force moves my life form, where the force of my intelligence moves my form, and what is aware of all happening is in our own experience, is our soul. But the soul is Mysterian. Mysterianism means it's unknowable. They're like, Mr. Within, you've given so many lectures, on reality. You don't believe you can know your soul? And I'll be like, I never said I believe I cannot know it. I believe that here in this world, we cannot know it. Let me tell you why. Because the point of this room is not that. Like this is a ridiculous reference, but probably not a good reference. But you know how in Squid Games, every game was different? You gotta look at life and you gotta be like, what games am I playing in? Right now I'm playing a game of self-existence. Okay, but I'm also involved in the game of species existence, but the species hasn't noticed. It's like we're 8 billion people on a football field, on a soccer pitch, right? And we are not playing the game. And there's a soccer ball there too, called the future, but we don't play the game. Nobody cares. Everybody's like roaming, staring like, yo, man. Some people are sitting on the grass, meditating, and the coach and like the people and the audience of the whole cosmos, like, what is humanity doing? It's like, play the game. Play the game you have been designed for. Don't escape your design so you escape the responsibility of the game. It's not possible. See, it's kind of like, this is I said a sentence earlier, that I don't believe in karma. Why? Because it's not a mirror. It's not just cause and effect. It's a divine agency. Do you know what that means? It's like this world is not a looping system. It has an author. The author can change the story. I'm just astonished that religion has, in some sense, been preserved this long. That means the fact that the religions were fighting over each other forced them to protect themselves. God's will is so great that it's like, if you wanted to know what the imaginable is, like humans have access to imaginable results. If you do something for yourself, it's in the domain of the imaginable. But when the higher power does something or gives you something, it comes from the unimaginable. And that's kind of like, if you know why I've kind of waited. It's like my politeness, I think. I At least that's what I tell myself. All right, man, you're being polite, The first chess move was, existence, and now your chess move was to be aware of it, to have an intention, and now I'm waiting to see what the cosmos. To be honest, for me, my soul wants to meet the system admin. My body wants to experience itself. My mind wants to serve the species in the world. And ultimately, all actions are for the system admin. You know what's funny is, the way I'm Muslim is, I will tell you, every particle in existence was Muslim before I was Muslim. And somebody's going to be like, what do you mean every particle in existence was Muslim? Everything that has been simulated by the original power, in the presence of the original power, knows the original power. You know what's strange? It's kind of like, those YouTube videos where you see the guy like raise the lion cub, and then like, put it in some like habitat, and then years later came back and the lion noticed. And the lion saw its owners and in some sense became a cub in front of them. A grown ass lion, do you know what I mean? I feel with divinity it's similar. It's like there was, at least for Muslims, if you ask a Muslim, where were you before you were born? They will say they were with God. But another way of zooming in on that answer is that they were in Alam al-Arwa. Alam al-Arwa translates as the world of the souls. There is Alam al-Mithal as well. Alam al-Mithal is more similar to Plato's world of forms, or or what modern, I guess New Age calls it astral, or what Tibetan Buddhism would consider the Barzakh. That means even though you're in this room, and even though you have not died yet, it doesn't mean you cannot be aware of where the rooms go. Like, it's like you might be at one end of the hallway, but you can see the other end. Or when you're driving, you're always seeing ahead before you know where the car goes. So for me, this is the blind spot. I guess a simple way where I can say it, it's all about establishing an honest, original relationship with the source of the power of this realm. Okay, that's the main game. That means if somebody's like Mr. Within, 10,000 talks, okay, that's a personal thing. Advancing civilization is let's say, an impersonal thing. But in some sense, when it comes to the divine, see, right now, I'll be honest, I care for myself like in a certain way. I care for you listeners who are listening in a certain way. I care for the species in a certain way. But as a soul, my priority is knowing the original. That's my priority. For me, the theological lens just made it clear that Adam and Eve made the mistake of listening to a simulated entity, and they forgot the original authority, the original power, the original command. You see, the soul was commanded into existence. Even though I'm telling you, the soul in Islam, it's said it's the secret of God, but it's also the Amr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which means it's the command of the system admin. That means you think you are your soul right now, but your soul has been commanded. You're technically the result of a divine command. You're the natural result of a divine command. Okay, but that divine command is not understandable. It's kind of like the intelligence that designed this program sees so much beyond the program that it cannot be limited to the program. Do you know? It's strange, but sometimes you can think that your blind spots exist because there's only you've selected one angle out of all the angles. Technically, think of it this way. Imagine somebody creates a statue. Centuries of different people come and see that statue. The statue remains the same. Yet, in the minds of all the beings that come and see it, it animates differently. To a young child, the statue might move. To an adult, the statue is a historic reference of an event. And you need to understand that free will is the ability to select specific meaning. Okay? But I say select, the options are not from us. So your free will is limited to the selecting out of the multiple choice, but what the multiple choice is. Like, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? The guy didn't decide the questions and the answers. The guy had a decision in just choosing the answer. Similarly, you have not designed this world. You can choose to know it, but you have not designed it. You cannot know it as deeply as its designer. Okay, that means if I drew a work of art and you saw that work of art, and if you're like, yo, man, I understood why the artist drew it. No, you don't. You don't understand where words or artwork or just any creativity emerges from. It emerges from, in some sense, the depth of man that has found a freedom. The only reason right now I can speak, like this is because there's a freedom. There's a freedom I didn't have when I was young. And it was self-exiled. It wasn't exiled by others. That means what I have come to understand is that I don't know anyone. I only know them in regards to what I co-create with them. You can speak to someone over, let's say, the phone for hours, and co-create like memories of each other's voices. But if you don't see that person physically, it's like they're not real. And the issue with humanity is that when it becomes emotional, it exaggerates the values. It's like, I think a strategy towards kind of, uncovering our blind spots or overcoming them is being able to discriminate. Pretty much, think of it this way. You got to discriminate between objects, subjects, and emotions. Sometimes you might have an emotion and you look at one object and that emotion renders that object with a specific subjective meaning. I'll give you an example. Someone gets angry is angry, and anybody who goes and talks to them, they're like, yo, man, this guy doesn't like me. And they're like, yo, man, no, it's just they were in an emotion. The person couldn't discriminate between the emotion and the object and the subjective layers. So they think because they have an emotion, the object and subjects are all accurate in alignment with the emotion. But no, there's moments I've been in such a happy place with like others, and it's been alive. The moment's been alive, and I've been, welcomed. But there was this part of me who suddenly, in like this happy moment, remembered a moment where I wasn't like that. And it made me sad, and I'm like, why? Why was something so huge as obstacles in my youth that years later I realized they were nothing? And that's really is. You keep thinking what you see is something, and then you realize it's nothing because there's something more important. What I'm really trying to tell you, it's honestly based on you as a being. How convinced are you by the stories that can never replace the direct experience of reality? I'm not Christian, but one story that I heard was of Thomas the Doubter. And the idea was like, Christ had resurrected back, and Thomas wasn't there, and all the apostles were like, Christ came back and we all saw Christ, and Thomas is like, no, if I can't touch the wound, in some sense I won't believe it. That's why he's Thomas the doubter. And then there comes a moment in the future where Christ appears, and out of all the apostles or disciples, he says, Thomas, come forth. And Thomas is the only, I guess, person in Christian theology who touched the, resurrected body of Christ. Okay, but keep in mind also, I am Muslim in the sense that nothing in the simulated world can equal the truth. Okay? However, God can do anything. That means as a human being, it's not possible for me to see another human being and be like, that's God. But from God's point of view, God can do anything with its system. You see, it's kind of like asking, is the creator of reality free or not? If you believe the creator of reality is not free, you become a Gnostic and you confuse yourself with the whole demiurge ordeal, you know? But if you in some sense realize God, it's like the first domino of causation. It's like they call it again, I spoke about this, the infinite regress theory. So it's pretty much wondering, okay, like before, what caused this, what caused that cause, what caused that cause. That's an infinite regress. Technically, it doesn't end. The only thing that makes sense is in some sense that the first thing that caused causation wasn't causal. It wasn't effectual. It's like God is a being that is not simulated. It doesn't have a beginning or end. But reality, the world has a beginning and an end, and we have a beginning and an end. Do you see what I'm saying? So it's pretty much like, okay, why has an awareness, an original memory, in some sense found itself in a simulated reality? Or why is there an awareness that looks at this simulated reality and suddenly feels like what's aware of the simulation is original? The soul, some people say it's the seat of awareness. So it's like people are like, yo man, what is the soul? Explain it to me objectively, subjectively. And we're like, buddy, it's where objects and subjects are noticed at the same time. Therefore, neither a subject, neither an object. You are an awareness. It's very difficult to say, if you pour water in a glass cup, is the water the glass? No. In the same way, human beings are not their bodies. They are the awareness to the experience of the body. That means, think of it this way. My body's range is like these atoms, like these seven average, the human average, existence is made of 7 octillion atoms, 10 to the power of 27. 7 times 10 to the power of 27. 7 octillion atoms. Okay, that's my body's range. My mind's range is all the different ways that I can see form. And think of it this way, like somebody could put a painting in front of me, okay, and suddenly like destroy that painting. I'll be like, all right, I'm seeing changing form in front of my eyes. But behind my eyes, the forms don't change like naturally. If I physically move, they do. But behind your eyes, your free will is there. So let's follow the idea that the ego is the defense, your sense of self is the defense mechanism of consciousness. Why is it again a defense mechanism? Because it's protecting its own sovereignty. So you're like this intelligent awareness. So think of it this way: your consciousness is this private, like this your own private space. In order for that to exist, you there needs to be a separation from everything. You don't understand. To be a self is another way of saying something noticed itself separate. Consciousness is really the awareness to difference. Do you know what that means? That means if we saw everything and everything was just one thing, then in some sense there would be, it's too designed. It's specifically designed for us to notice different geometry. Like sometimes when I, when I, even right now when I'm looking at reality, it feels to me like imagination I didn't have to imagine. It's like imagination that was there from before. Existence is like the result of another mind, or a mind beyond the notion of the mind. And it's fascinating because you're like, yo, man, I'm not just like born and just hovering in the middle of a vacuum. I'm born in a specific scenario. And what are the clues about this specific scenario? And in some sense, what is the value of my life? And this is the conclusion I reached, that I do not know the value of my life because it's limited. That means I look at my life, I give it a value. You might look at my life and give it a value. Society may look at my life and give it a value. The few past generations may have a view on, like, look, if they could, they look at my life and see a value. The future generations might see a value, that people don't see now. Do you know? So in this game of values, we're trying to figure out what's true, but the whole point of it is, analytically, you will come to infinity. That's the edge of analysis. The edge of analysis is either the void or the infinite. And I'm telling you, the human mind, because it has self-simulated itself in so many ways, it can pretty much, the moment you had like your second memory, that's when you could in some sense animate like endless personalities. That means if you were just one idea, there would only be that idea, but it's kind of like there's two ideas. Because there's two ideas, those two ideas can endlessly relate. Anyways, and if I was to finalize this lecture by telling you what I feel the ultimate blind spot of the human species is that it thinks it is the higher power. You may be the most advanced species on Earth, but is Earth the most advanced state of being, place of being? There are questions that will remain unanswered in this room. But the point of it is, we've all arrived here. I don't know where your soul has arrived, but you have arrived on Earth in the year 2025 right now. Okay? And there's stuff going on. There's collective projects. Your own life is an individual project. And the word project is very fitting because it's a projection. That means when I like someone, for example, let's say you see someone and you like them, at some point the person has to be like, okay, why do I like this person? And when they wonder about that, it's because something about them has reminded them of something about themselves. This means that attraction is not generalized. It's based on how the conditioning was. Do you know what that means? My honest belief is that people they are so concerned about, and like, how they will end up in the future, that they just want, I think deep down, after money or after universal income or that era, people are just going to seek ability. People, I've noticed this, people care, their behavior changes around those who have greater ability than them. But the question is, not everybody knows their own ability. And the point of it is not to make human beings the top of the hierarchy. Human beings have always succeeded, or they have lived lives when they have lived for greater values than themselves. That's what makes life beautiful. Okay, that there's a hierarchy here. that from the beginning of your life, in all the dimensions, whether man-made, nature-made, or divine-made, whether man-forged, nature-forged, or divinely forged, ultimately it's about awareness as movement or to movement. Like I'm pretty much, I want to tell you, the way you've lived so far has programmed a way for you to extract meaning. If you limit yourself to your own meaning, you loop. You need to update, but the update doesn't happen from a relationship of present to past. It happens from present to future. So pretty much I'm telling you, advance beyond your definitions, and perhaps a world will find you. It's pretty much like, it's kind of difficult. It's like you got to look at something without giving it meaning. Can you do that? Anybody who can do that, you can pretty much access, like, an ability set. It's about awareness, guys. I'm telling you, it all comes down to awareness. What you're aware of is what you can utilize to be something. So if you're only aware of yourself, that's a kind of life. It's a type of life simulation. If you become aware of the species, I am telling you, you will feel different. Like waking up and feeling like you can serve the human species is such an honorable feeling that I was like, they even stripped us of our honor for ourselves. They made us honor abstract categories over an original truth that we are a species before we are, in some sense, any personal story or societal story. Or a chunk of land can define you. Excuse me, you are a species on Earth. The Earth but the species has access to the Earth. I'm waiting for that day. Like, let me tell you, when that day comes where they say transport is free, that's when you know civilization is advancing. Because in some sense, the value of civilization is not just maintenance, is not just survival, it's connecting the dots. There could be a child born in Africa that needs to be, in some sense, in a team in, like, in Japan or something. You know what I mean? Like, we don't know where our souls are truly destined for, but the whole point of it is, after the world has shown itself to us, what shall we show? Not just the world, but all that is. You're performing in the presence of not just the whole world, but the original position beyond it. Secularly, if people are like, yo, how would you explain monotheism to a secular person? Imagine a singularity beyond the observable realm, pulling everything towards it. Because in some sense, everything has nowhere else to go. The simulation has nowhere else to go. Do you understand, guys? You're simulated from your birth. You're maintained. You maintain yourself too. And then at some point you leave. When you leave, it's like, all right, the awareness experienced enough simulations of itself, daily simulations of itself. But for what reason? That's the question. Why are you experiencing human existence? Because there are mysteries. Because the whole act of human knowledge was simulating a subjective model to explain the objective model, but we realize the subjective model is giving meaning to the objective model. People are like, yo man, sure, I'll give you that. The body is in time, but the mind isn't considering the notion of time. The mind is time. Do you know what I mean? If you consider space, the mind is space. You see, the body is individual, separate from the world. But when it comes to the mind, copy pasting that relationship and modifying it in the inner realms, think of it this way: your body has an ability to be in a world. Your mind has an ability to be the world. Your body has an ability to just be the concept in the context. Your mind can be the context, and believe it or not, it is. But you're not just the mind, because if you ask the question, what is the deeper context beyond my objective is, excuse me, beyond my subjective meaning? So you're not just wondering about the limits of your objective form, but you're wondering about the limits of your subjective meaning. And the limit, think of it this way: it's like, yo man, it's like, what has greater, more limitless access than my body? Okay, my mind. Or it's like thinking of this way: if the soul is pure unknown freedom at its core, or let me say it differently. The awareness to your body as shaped, the shaped subjective awareness to your body, you treat as mind. But the unshaped, because it's a viewer, it's like legit, like a spotlight, your consciousness, one-sided spotlight starting from your eyes. It's like your body's texture is objective, your mind's texture is subjective. Your body is like ice, it's in solid state. Your mind is like a liquid space. You can change your mind. What does that mean? You shifted the way the liquid was in the container of the moment. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like like traditional view, body, mind, soul. Then we have the traditional view on substance states, where it's like solid, liquid, gas. Okay, gas we can't see, but the particles are there. Similarly, the soul, the awareness is there, but there is no form to move. And subjects are like liquid in the sense that they change and move and faster than the body does. Do you know? So where am I going with this? Your body is found in your mind, or your body finds its meaning as a character in a story, but you have been an awareness to many different characteristics of yourself. That means how many, like 12,000 days means 12,000 times I stopped the simulation, I went to sleep, nothing, 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 and then I woke up, okay, something again. And then something, 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 and then nothing, 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 then something, 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 then nothing, nothing, nothing. At some point, you're like, what am I looking at here? Okay, enough. It's like the soul's like, I get it, it's simulated, I get it, honestly. My beloved system admin, I see you have designed this world to loop, so we ask why. You have designed suffering, so we wonder what else. You have designed death for us to wonder, what is this life? Why are you some sort of unknown life force moving a known body, in sort of, in the known language, in known languages, only to realize you're an unknown movement in an unknown movement. It's like, yo, man, you know what I mean? It's like a drop in the ocean being like, yo, man, am I still a drop? But I feel everything moving at the same time. But believe it or not, guys, I think the most fascinating thing about being human is that we can notice beyond our human frameworks. And I didn't fully share the idea, but in the same way, a dog looks at the human owner and sees the human owner as a bigger dog, perhaps we need to make sure the human species doesn't make the mistake of humanizing that which is beyond human.
Because if we do that, there's no way of knowing beyond human, because we've limited. It's like we've put a box on our head, and we're like, why don't I see the truth? Well, guess what? There's something between you and the truth. What is it? Your expression. The thing that decides in the Holy Quran, the source code to the main operating system of reality, it's very clear. There's like three clues. I've looked at it because I wanted to know what Islam is saying about why humans exist, and of course, the the first the initial answer is there's a reason that only God knows. Even human beings don't know. God knows why human beings have been created. You know, in the same way, like a robot may not understand why it was created, but we do. We see the utility it has that it doesn't see it has. Okay, in the same way, the higher levels are seeing potential in you. They're not seeing, it's like, hope was in the room before the hopeless, uh, you know, uh, you know, got there. So what it means is that any human being, any being that can see beyond, that can wonder about beyond the shape of their reality, is technically very intelligent. See, intelligence is not about acquiring new things. Intelligence is about realizing what's going on before you started performing. See, I was born in 1991. I've been performing in existence since then. I've been existing since then, like physically existing since then. But how many things have been existing before I have existed? Like I was born post the English alphabet. Do you know what I mean? It's like wondering about who would I be before I learned language. Or who would I be if I, instead of identifying with my past for a second, I identified with the potential of my being rather than just, examples of its absence of potential. But whatever it is, because we will leave the world room, it's like you don't just have one lifetime to get to know people or other beings, you have one lifetime. You don't just have one lifetime to get to know yourself, you have one lifetime to get to know it all here. And for now, my final view on what's going on here is that we're inside a simulated testing zone. Tons of like maybe even countless simulations are all aligned for some reason, and we're inside a simulated testing zone within a divine surveillance state. Do you know what that means? That means if I created a bunch of androids, I put them in the room in some sort of house, and I programmed them to be act like a family. Imagine a father android, mother android, daughter android, son android. I would probably install surveillance cameras in the eyes of the androids where they can't tell. They may look for cameras outside, but they might not be able to realize they themselves are the camera. Right? When I say we're within a divine surveillance state, it means the awareness the higher power has of the lower power is beyond how the lower power can fathom the higher power understanding it. So I guess the issue is that we have people are trying to be limitless. But if you don't know your limitations, how would you know the limitless? How would you know truth if you were not inside a simulation? It's a blessing in disguise of a world that looks like it's not going to be here. But the intention of why intelligence moves at all is here. For me, it's kind of like, where is it all going before I could even imagine a place? It fascinates me. I'm telling you, at some point in this world will fascinate you more than any other. It's like just all your task is to keep yourself as an open system. When you become a closed system, which usually happens when knowledge happens, when somebody learns something or knows something, they identify with it. And when they identify with what they know, they can't know anything else, because that it's limited to that archetype. Become fascinated by the unknown and be sincere in your pursuit of truth in here. Okay? Like, and be very careful, because you got to be honest in this life. I'm not saying that as a good virtue. I'm saying that to you, to any being who first wants to live in accordance to original data, original information of reality, or original ways of being, but also because honestly, I'll say this: the future is where fascination lives. It's all about seeing what you didn't see yesterday. Very fascinating. 8 billion beings who have been designed in a system that is temporary, yet they have wondered about the eternal. This world is this planet, this earth here. It's neither a beastly hell and it's neither an angelic heaven. It's an intelligent workstation, testing zone. And the test is, I was telling you there's clues in the Holy Quran. One clue is that God, in the Holy Quran, I'm a visual learner, it says, I created mankind and jinnkind for the sole purpose of worshiping me. That's one clue, one pointer. Second clue, I have created mankind for his deeds. That means your actions are very important. Okay? It's fascinating. It's like beings that discover they were simulated and then discover the simulations were simulated. The only place they could be simulated was in the original awareness. Alright guys, welcome to the chat section. There's a question. Somebody says thoughts on plasma physics breakthroughs and the connection to global awakening. Feel free to explain plasma physics breakthroughs. I mean, I have a certain understanding of plasma. You're not explaining it the biological definition, of course, so let me see what context you're asking the question. Alright guys, hold on, I gotta check this out. I'm actually interested to see what this is.
Guys, I am so sorry. This was on mute and I was speaking for what? What was it, like 15, 20 minutes? Shit. It happens. I was pretty much saying how amazing the viewers are. Honestly, we all are amazing because our future can be. How do we enter the future? And guys, I said some very nice things, but it was on mute. But to kind of recap it, the blind spot that I find humanity has is that it's storytelling, it's identifying with known stories, it's storytelling over an unknown event. And the true scholarly realization is that all knowledge roots back to the deep mystery. And this is my view. I don't know how the world will view me, but I believe, I've experienced this, you will reach a point after, this is not out of arrogance, it's out of design, I'm saying this, you will reach a point after mastery. Mastery means you've attained final confidence in something, like you're comfortable. Like right now, everybody is a master in, like, you know, if you're someone who can walk and you've been walking since you're a kid, you've mastered walking. You don't think about it. Do you know? But why do we think about truth? Perhaps we haven't mastered our clarity yet. Okay? So, after mastery, what you find is power. See, you're trying to be powerful in a condition. You have access to conditional power. You put a trillionaire in front of me, you put the strongest person in front of me, you even put the smartest person in front of me, I'll be like, oh, look at this. These are conditional powers. Even some people who are like, it took me a while to realize this, but there's people on this planet who are more emotionally intelligent than the others, and they don't tell the others when they're communicating to them. You know, and so then you're kind of communicating to someone limited to your own emotional intelligence, even though they're seeing something that they don't tell you they are. You know. But anyways, where I'm going with this is that it's not easy trusting a changing world, but it does seem to be a great strategy. We're storytelling. Free will is just a conscious simulation in a line of unconscious simulations, but all those simulations are within a conscious original moment. Like, I'm not saying life is like this, but sometimes it does feel to me that everything is like a simulation from one original moment of being. So there was the original is something the simulated can't fathom, because the simulated entity is identifying with change. It's like when you identify with form, you find yourself in a changing world. If you don't identify with form, you're identifying most likely with force. Force, think of it this way. Your body is giving you an experience of being designed. Your mind gives you a little bit of an experience of being able to design. Now, I also looked at this world and I'm like, yo, man, it's too big for us. Like, the world could have been a smaller place and human beings still could have, like, learned their lessons. But why is it so big? Do you know what I mean? It's like we're sitting on the shoulder of a giant and we're like, why is the giant here? Like, you know, like, sure, our ancestors climbed on the shoulder of the giant, but why is there a giant's shoulder we're standing on? Do you know what I mean? Like, we have to wonder about, like, the whole cosmic event is an unknown movement, guys. All human knowledge is how we've tried to align our subjective models to the objective models and experientially verify. But to be honest, there's a limitation to the subjective modeling of man of reality. That means you ask the question, can all of reality fit into an idea? And the answer is no. Reality, an idea is just a part of reality. The truth beyond reality is beyond our understanding of what real means. Reality for human beings is conditional. God's reality is unconditional. That's the power. Do you understand? Like, you're living a conditional life right now. You're being responsible for functioning in a conditional situation. And perhaps death is when you actually get to experience and become responsible for an unconditional experience. You know what I'm saying? Like, anyways, if you don't know what I'm saying, God knows everything. To be honest, guys, truth is beyond the world room. Therefore, the word truth, what can it mean? Beyond form. That means right now you're not just you are contextually the languages that you express through. These languages are not just limited to just verbal language. It's also physical language. That means your behaviors, like you can technically treat the behavior of let's say people in one culture compared to another culture. They're like, yo man, these people aren't twins, but they were born in the same behavioral language program. Excuse me. I had a funny experience because when I was younger, they're like, I'm a twin physically. Like, in this world, I have a twin brother, and people were like, yo man, you and your twin brother are alike. And I'm like, yeah, it's like we're twins, common sense. And then at some point, I experienced a different culture, and I'm like, yo man, what I thought was like me and my brother's like unique kind of twinism. Do you know what I mean? I'm like, no, it's not. It's culture. It's like everybody from that culture is like a twin in behavior. Do you know what I mean? And the values they hold. So it's like as much as there's differences, there's commonalities. And for me, I've repeated it too much, but it's really try to. One thing I forgot to mention, I told you there were three clues in the Holy Quran. Another clue was that in the Holy Quran, I don't remember the exact way the passage was, but I remember the exact imagery. It's saying that God created man as a vicegerent. That means we're in this world not just as that which identifies with its ability based on the past, but its ability based on the future, what it can do. Okay, and it's also like being a vicegerent of a higher reality. It's kind of like your purpose is here to show the other realities why it's higher. Do you know what I mean? There's a reason theologically God told all its creation, I have created man for a reason you do not know. And it was technically the inability to be patient, to have faith in the unknown, that led to, in some sense, unnecessary simulations in knowledge, or maybe even necessary beyond our understanding. At some point, you're going to be like, okay, I'm not a dolphin, I'm not a bird, I'm not an eagle, I'm not some shimmering light being, I'm a human. I am occupying the human position in manifestation. Now, what is the human task? Which involves what do you do with your body and mind, but also the mind gives you an access to kind of have a relationship with your own awareness beyond form. It's kind of like I'm saying you're non-physically being the physical, being the awareness, the space where the physical is found.
Do you understand? You're not just physical in the sense that you're just aware of the physical. And one of the most brilliant things is that we have access to the future through probabilities behind our eyes. But in front of it, we have to wait our turn. It means the mind, because it doesn't have limitations, again, because I imagine a flying car, when I visualize a flying car, gravity doesn't bring it crashing down right away. So natural law, so it's like this entity on this planet has an ability to see natural law, but behind its eyes, visualize things beyond the laws. And it's kind of like we've been commanded into manifestation, and that command is superior to our natural understanding of it. So think of it this way. We have the natural, we have the unnatural. So natural is like, nature. Unnatural, let's say man-made. And then we have the supernatural. Or let's say the metanatural, what comes after nature. They're like, yo man, if this world was like an onion and you were peeling the layers, or let's say it was like a banana but it had multiple layers, so you peeled the banana, there was another banana inside. Like imagine a Russian doll banana. Do you know what I mean? And this poor monkey is trying to eat a banana. It's like, yo man, I keep peeling the skin. Oh, and there's another layer, another layer, another layer. Do you understand? We're tunneling through kind of fiction to figure out non-fiction, or we're tunneling through non-fiction in a fictional way to clearly get a sense of what is the fiction. Anyways, thank you for listening. The blind spot of humanity is that it convinces itself of being limitless when it's limited. Your limitations are not your weaknesses. They are portals to the limitless. If you look at your past and you're like, why was I weak? Why did I suffer? Why did that happen to me? That specific thing happened to me. And you're going to realize it's so you become aware of the other side of the coin of that experience. All right, guys, there's more activity in the chat section. Somebody said, thought you dipped. I'm back, guys. Sorry, it was on mute. It broke my heart too. But anyways, it's fine. My heart rebuilds itself when it notices the future. So then somebody says in this chat section, but we live in the now. That's always slipping into the future. Makes you wonder who the alpha observer is. Okay, that's an interesting way of saying it. Baseline reality isn't the same for every observer. I'm saying baseline reality is not reality. Do you know what I mean? It's like the dog that as long as the dog thinks the pet owner is a bigger alpha dog, it will never understand the truth. And I'm saying if we limit what is beyond this to just this, then we have denied the beyond. They're censoring the unknown so you feel safe in your knowledge. Oh my God, guys, this lecture's over 2 hours. It felt to me like an hour. But to be honest, the future is so fascinating that it's just a privilege to be able to see it. Even if you don't do anything in your life, you got to see it. You got to see the human experience. You got to tour civilization.
Whatever, wherever you are, whatever corner of manifestation you're looking through, you are in some corner, you know? And it's remarkable. It's remarkable that right now we're not in a world of clones. Yet people look at electrons and protons and they're like, yo, man, they're all electrons. You know? Do you know what I mean? It's too well designed. Anyways, thank you for listening. And whoever you are, wonder about your own blind spots. And once you surpass the self, wonder about the blind spots of the species. So wonder about what you're not seeing right now. After you've kind of conquered that game, wonder about what your species is not seeing right now. And then wonder about, in some sense, what the world is not seeing about the world. Like what you're not seeing about the depth of the world. The whole point of it is we're shifting from survival to stewardship. Stewardship means, okay, we figured out individual survival. Now we got to figure out collective survival. After we figure out collective survival, we got to wonder about collective purpose. Like if you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, it kind of goes up to self-actualization. Right now I'm saying, all right, once the individual reaches self-actualization, it's like, oh my God. The species needs to self-actualize. We need to get every person on the planet, like physiologically, like, you know, physiological safety, psychological safety, emotional safety, all the levels going up to at some point where the person's like, yo, man, I've actualized as a self. I can accept myself being actually here. But at some point, I'm telling you, you're living for your own purpose, in your own story. Then you're going to realize how incredible it is that we can all live to solve all of our problems, not just our own. Beyond the stories of man, truth smiles as a greatness to be found. As the greatness to be found. Being able to be aware of the future, being able to be aware of yourself. What awareness means is that there is still something that can be done. That's the thing. Consciousness means there's work to do. Because it could have been unconscious. Somebody explained to me evolutionarily what was the utility in consciousness. For a long time, from a secular perspective, for a long time, yo man, the creature's going through pain, like other animals are biting it, but it doesn't process it. Do you understand? It doesn't notice, like they didn't have shoes back in the day. Do you know how savage that is? Walking barefoot, you know, not even knowing how to interpret pain. You know, they weren't conscious though. So I'm saying this is the weird thing. You had this automated system program, evolutionary biological program, living unconscious. That means it didn't reinterpret its interpretation. But then when it became conscious, it noticed pain, suffering. It's going to die at some point. Like what? How is that in a good evolutionary strategy? Do you know what I mean? Consciousness is, evolution doesn't explain like why consciousness, and sure, somebody might say, okay, consciousness gave us an ability to adapt due to future awareness, but I'm telling you, at what cost? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, and at the same time, I see even counter arguments to what I'm telling you, like much ahead, because the reason is, the ending exists to see the beauty of the beginning. That's it. Because it will end, there's a truth we need to find. Because it will end, there's something of value and meaning in this.
In any relationship you're in, if the person was forever there, you probably wouldn't care after some point. Do you know what I mean? Do you know? But if the person could leave at any point, you're like, okay. You see, it's we have this thing that we think it's just good or bad, you know? Something added being added good, something being taken away bad. You know, we have this kind of view, but it doesn't necessarily mean. You know, I'm trying to say to you that as a human being on this earth, my observation has been that it is not based on individual programming. It's bigger. It's like pretty much being on earth is like waking up every day to a bigger game that was happening than yesterday. It's not per se bigger, deeper, because it's you don't know the size of it. You know, that means if I look at civilization right now and I compare it from the past, compared to the past, I'm like, yo, man, we're so advanced. They didn't have toilets back in the day, you know, or they didn't have cell phones back in the day. You know, they didn't have coffee cups back in the day. Do you know what I mean? They didn't have cappuccinos back in the day. Look at those poor souls, you know. It's like, how did our ancestors survive without cappuccino machines? I don't get it. You know, compared to the past, of course, anything's advanced. Compared to yesterday, I'm an advanced being, way more advanced being. I'm seeing way more. I'm noticing way more. There's more patterns to relate to things to, do you know? But when it comes to the future, we are not advanced. That's the beautiful thing. If the thing is, if you want to be acknowledged as a specific value, it's a lesser state than in some sense. Like, to be honest, you know what I'm saying? Like, the only reason like it's become easy for me to give these talks is because the scale of the outcome is too much. That means it's like do you know what I mean? Like, this is going to be a very bizarre thing to say, but even dictators, okay, or tyrants in history, because of their vast tyranny, they were capable of being way more tyrannical than the average person. That means if you, how do I say it? What are your settings? The settings of your expectations on reality. And pretty much like the settings to the human experience, you either adjust yourself to the world or you adjust the world to yourself. Children want to adjust the world to themselves, but as they grow up, they realize the profoundness of changing yourself. There's a quote that this poet Rumi said. He's like, when I was younger, I wanted to change the world, but now that I'm older, I'm going to change I change myself. There's things right now you don't know. The deep urges I have, in my mind, it's like way more of life is futuristic than in front of it. That means if somebody says, Mr. Within, explain the difference between how much you have traveled in front of your eyes and behind your eyes. Ooh, the amount I have traveled behind my eyes, the amount of context shifts I've experienced behind my eyes compared to in front of my eyes is countlessly more. The poet Rumi also has said, before death takes away all that is given, give away all there is to give. What's cool is that I feel we've all been given something. We've been given the tools of our destiny. And it's all about if you used it. It's like, imagine somebody gave you a Bugatti for like 100 years. Did you drive it? Imagine somebody gave you an Iron Man suit, but instead it was a Carbon Man suit. You know, it's like the human form is a suit. It's a suit that is constantly suiting itself to the awareness, to the attention, to where the attention is. In other words, we are the presence of an unknown awareness where the life force of our mind, the unknown life force from, it's like the soul is an unknown awareness, the mind is a unknown force, but as it moves the body, it creates a language to know itself. I think, just like how AI is based on language models, I think similarly, it's not per se a language model, but a meaning model. You know, it's because to me, ideas point to meaning rather than having meaning. Language is pointing to experience. Okay? As Wittgenstein said, the limits of my language are the limits of my world. As all the Abrahamic religions said it, you're in a simulation, yo. Calm down and try to notice, the host of your world. That means, I'll finish off by saying this. You could see this as kind of like a blind spot, or and overcoming it. It's kind of like, how do I say it? Okay, I'll just say this. You're in a room of a mansion and you think one room is the whole mansion. It is not. Go beyond your self room. You're going to find the room of the species. After you've served the species, you're going to find the world room. Okay? And when you go into the world room, in some sense, you're going to, how do I say it? You're being responsible. Oh my God. We have a concept of self in the context of world. The concept of self is being responsible for itself. Then it's becoming responsible for the species. Then it's becoming responsible for the environment. And then at the end, the only thing left to become responsible for is the origin, is the totality. So it's like the result of systems thinking is the realization of a higher power. You're not in a school, like to all those people reincarnationists, like, guys, relax, you're not in some school of infinite learning. Okay, you can choose to see it that way. In the same way, like a kid fails the same class and has to retake it a million times. Imagine a soul instead of a kid in a class, right? But I'm saying, to me, you don't even need the past. Even you don't need, like, how do I explain this? Discover the original command of your soul. Before the stories of the mind convince you otherwise. The most important thing is intelligent interaction levels. That's what's priceless. That's what money can't buy. Let's say the evil trillionaire, powerful, got everything with money, but he's like, why don't my grandkids like me? Why is it that when they come around me, it's like my presence scares them? That's heartbreaking, to be honest. But on some level, it's because we identify with the intensity of scenarios that are actually changing. But at some point, we also have to perform. So somebody says adapt or die seems to be the prime directive. I think the prime directive is
to be aware of first what you're adapting to, or what there is to adapt. I mean, sure, the amygdala in the brain, no, fight or flight, but no, the purpose of it is not just it's adapt, or I mean, technically, let's say adapt or die, but what if there's the notion of looping? What if you adapt to a loop? Then the only way out is to die. No, I'm joking. I don't know. For me, there is an ability to select what we adapt to. There's an awareness prior to action. And I mean, of course, like, but the thing is, we don't know if death is the finale. See, the whole point of it is this world the final place? This is what separates theists with atheists. To the theist, this world is not the final place. My whole argument is that we cannot make absolute statements on, or how should I say it, we cannot, let me say it this way. If I say we can only adapt or die, I'm limiting the whole system to those two concepts. Could there be concepts or ways of experience that we don't know yet? I think there's more blind spots, you know? So I think in every moment, there's so many views to that moment that we don't have access. Some of those views the future generations may see. We may even understand that in some sense, what we are adapting beyond death, maybe. You know? That means there's something deeper that is, sure, let's say it's adapting, but it cannot die. That means the question is, if you couldn't die, what would life still be adaptation? It wouldn't matter. Because you die, you adapt. But if you were immortal and there were no consequences, the purpose of life is not adaptation then. Right? Imagine in the future, there's digital consciousness, some sort of cyber conscious immortality, and then you tell that person adapt, or, you know, the purpose of life is to adapt or die, and the person's going to be like, buddy, I'm living as some sort of cyber god in my own simulated server. You know what I mean? It's like everything adapts to me in my simulation. See, the point of it is, do we know accurately how many dimensions reality is functioning through to then accept it in those specific dimensions? And my view is that there's 100% blind spots to human perception. I mean, the whole human perception is a certain range of the electromagnetic spectrum, right? We don't see Wi-Fi waves, yet they exist. You know, or like, I don't see your brain, yet you have a brain. I don't see my own brain, and yet I have a brain. You know? And the point of it is, what are we not seeing about ourselves that we are being? That's the difficulty. So the point of it is, sure, I could turn life into a closed system and be like, yo, man, it's only this or that. You know, only these two ways, and that's it, man. Like, don't talk to me anymore. But if you see it as an open system, pretty much what I'm telling you, ask yourself, like, if somebody else, just imagine this, if somebody else came up to you, okay,
If somebody came up to you and said something to you, would you believe it instantly? You'd be like, no, you'd think about it. Guess what? What if you came and said something to yourself and you never questioned it? Have you ever thought about that? Have you ever thought about that you might have convinced yourself to be convinced by something? Or maybe it's subconscious urges. Maybe out of fear you accept something. Maybe out of fear of death you adapt, right? Or think of it this way, people lie out of fear of consequence. Like they're human beings on this planet. They live a life where they lie. And who was it? Aristotle was like, buddy, when you lie, you're creating simulations. That means a dishonest person has way more simulations to wake up, way more, and like tons of unnecessary simulations over the actual simulation. Do you know? And my approach is like, yo man, when you find yourself in a complex moment, either try to, go through that complexity. If you can't, simplify it. Become simpler and try to find another way through access. Kind of like mountain climbing, right? Like I'm not personally a climber, but I've seen videos, and it's like you climb a mountain, you reach a point where you can't just go up vertically. You got to kind of go horizontally and then go from another part vertically, you know? Somebody in the chat section says, do you think fear is tied to the ego? Bruh. I think it is tied to the ego, because if I ask you who has fear, the answer is the ego. But the ego, there's different ways of seeing it, right? So from one angle, it's I said it earlier, I believe, the self-defense mechanism of consciousness. You need an ego to be sovereign. Okay? But at the same time, think of it this way. There's reasonable fear and there's unreasonable fear. If the ego has unreasonable fear, it's like, yeah, yo, man, it's like update the program, please. Update the operating system. Pretty much think of it this way. Most creatures, they fear what they don't understand. Fear is kind of like whenever you're feeling fear, you're kind of entering a new space. Think of it this way. Fear is the result of either yourself changing in the world or the world changing the self. Either the self is changing the world in a certain way, and the point of it is the ego is identifying with past control. That means, do you know what your future ego is? No. Do you know what sort of self you're going to identify 10 years from now? You don't know. The ego is just past the kind of like your system being like, buddy, this is what happened in the past. You sure you want this to happen now? Do you know what I mean? The ego, Alan Watts said it, it's like your immediate sense of self. But I'm telling you, how can you be your ego? Perhaps only in communication. Because how many senses of self have you tunneled through? Guys, I guess I'll go 5 minutes more. We kind of give a 3-hour lecture. Somebody said, maybe I just have a bad, weird mind. It's rare I break cycles. Nah, man, nah. What it is, I think, is that if we identify with the past, the future kind of doesn't make sense. I feel like it's this strange thing of, I think it's a blessing actually that we wake up every day kind of feeling like resetting anew, right? Even though we come back to if you saw life as a multiplayer online game, you kind of come back to your same save checkpoint before you slept, right? That means I will tell you that moments before I sleep,
And then the moment I wake up, there's a continuity of the memory. So when I wake up, it doesn't feel like I've been sleeping 8 hours. It just feels like light was off and then it turned on again. There was this person who once told me they had a dream that felt like they were like living 300 years as a dwarf, like in their dream. And I was like, all right. Guys, I'm not making this up. Somebody once said it. Said it. Me and my brother were both in the same place when the person said it. But that's the thing. How convinced are you that this limited information processor has access to all of it? There's 10 to the power of 80 atoms in the observable universe, like kind of estimated. You're now occupying 7 times 10 to the power of 27 atoms. That's your responsibility right now. Like they're like, yo man, what should human beings do? Okay, be responsible for these atoms. Once you're responsible for these atoms, try to be responsible for the rest of the atoms. Guys, I appreciate the engagement. The point of it is not like one person says something and everybody's like, yay. The point of it is like we're all trying to figure out what's going on here. We need everything we can use. We need every DNA, human DNA that has a perception on reality that we don't. And the value of the human is so beyond how the human perceives it. You have a value beyond your understanding. Just go forward in this life and, you know, if through the system admin's mercy, you're going to realize, because you don't understand how important this sentence, the system admin's mercy. That means you don't get out of this simulation because you typed in the right passcode. You get out of this simulation by knowing the host. Okay? Do you know what that means? That means, like, imagine you're at a gathering, you've attended somebody's house party, okay, or imagine you set up a party, okay, at your house, and you invite people there. Now, someone, first time they're coming into your house, they don't just go, like, at least in Persian culture, it's kind of like this, they don't just go into random parts of your house without you knowing. They ask for permission. They're like, okay, where's the bathroom? You know what I mean? The person's like, the bathroom's there. Or in some sense, okay, where's the balcony? It's like, the balcony is there. You know what I mean? So the point, I see it very similar, that I'm not in some analytical system where I need to just find one equation or type some code and, all right, done. It's, reality was as simple as typing code in a keyboard. No. It's an intelligent interaction. You need to become familiar with the intelligence of the original intelligence of your world here. Okay? And once you do, the context is different. Similarly to how, as you climb higher in the elevations of the mountain, you get to see views you didn't see before. Every day you're living on this planet, you're like going a bit further on the mountain, seeing something about the view you didn't see before. But it's gradual. You don't notice it. That means if I compared you from, let's say, when you were like 10 years old to, like, imagine you're like a 90-year-old person, like, you know what I mean? I'm trying to tell you, like, the gap. Okay, that means if you see, let's say if you see it, instead of going from A, B, C, D, or from step 1 to like step 7, step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, instead of that, it just goes from step 1 to 7. Miracle. Do you see what I'm saying? And the human situation is that we cannot fully understand this. We don't have that much processing power physically as biological organisms, but we can at least stop fearing how beyond the specific way we've understood reality moves. That's what I'm telling you. The whole point of these lectures is to make you more fascinated by what you don't know than what you know, and you realize you are an explorer based on your potential in the future rather than some specific
specific conditioned character based on your past. Your past is giving you access to the unconditional. Excuse me. Your past is giving you access to the conditional. The future is giving you access to that which you can notice beyond conditions, your current conditions. Anyways, guys, thank you for listening. We hit the 3-hour mark. Yeah, thanks for listening, whoever made it through. And rise, mankind, rise in the sight of the one and only. My true prayer, my biggest desire, is to see how advanced all of this can be. So think of human life as a game of discovering the hidden advancement to it all, the secret advancement of being. To be free before you could not be is to realizing the original power, the original is like the first location to all locations, you know, or I should say differently. When you truly open your eyes in this world, you will realize they have always been open. It's all about the human species, or humans, to realize the future has smiled before the past frowned. The potentials of greatness were there before, whether they were activated or not. Anyways, thank you for listening. Yeah. In the name of God, the most benevolent, the most merciful. Go directly to the system admin. The original waits for the simulated return, for the return of all simulations. Anyways, thank you guys. Take care.